Hello, everybody, and thanks very much for that introduction, Ian. And so, to kick off the discussion today and the areas that we'll be covering, this panel is going to be looking to the different ways that deepfakes, as an example of this kind of new type of risk coming from AI technologies, can perpetuate harm. And something that I find quite interesting with this area is when from previous experience of working in, the first kind of misinformation like related to harm policies and response to that at a large social media company, and then moving into a smaller e-commerce type platform, and then now working with innovators individually. Um, Something that is quite surprising is that while people are very, very aware of, these kind of joke elements of what it means for deep fakes and, yeah, like pictures of the Pope or pictures of, President Trump in compromising positions, and how this can be seen as being quite amusing, especially when it is in that celebrity space that Ian was talking about. But actually, the the widest range of harms and the most significant types of harms are things that are felt by people which can be within their everyday lives, and these can be ordinary people, including children as well. And I think in that respect, sometimes it can be quite surprising for innovators that are developing products that can help to facilitate the dissemination or production of these types of technologies, as well as parents, teachers, and just organizations in general. Something that can be quite surprising is how easily and how common these kind of risks happen, even in spaces where people wouldn't necessarily expect to see them, like e-commerce areas. And so with this view in mind, we have this panel where we will be exploring the different elements of how deepfakes have been contributing to harm, and also discussing as well like what that means for some of the responses we may need. Um, for those that have read the agenda, and they may notice as well that we don't have a representative from Ofcom here today due to an illness, and also, I guess, for those that are also into astrology, it is Mercury retrograde time, so this is also a time of where these type of events are going to could be a bit problematic. But in any case, yeah, so we don't have the full panel, but we do have George from Illuminate Tech, who's joining us and will be helping to bring in some additional insights for that discussion as well. And so now I will hand over to Emma from the Internet Watch Foundation for the deep dive of looking into how deepfakes is affecting is happening within the sexual exploitation and abuse space. And also just to flag as well that, yeah, while there's not going to be, it's not a discussion area where there's going to be a lot of graphic content or things like this. We will be touching on some areas that people could find sensitive, especially if you have not been exposed to these types of online harms before. So, yeah, just take care of yourself and be aware that could be coming up in the course of the discussions today too. But yeah, now I'll hand over to you, Emma.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to trust that if no one can hear me, that someone is going to shout and tell me. So hopefully that's all working. My name is Emma Hardy, and I'm the Communications Director at the Internet Watch Foundation and a co-director of the UK Safer Internet Centre. The Internet Watch Foundation was founded almost 30 years ago, and we identify, disrupt, and remove online child sexual abuse imagery. We are headquartered in Cambridge, but we work globally during the course of our work. And the Crown Prosecution Service and the National Police Chiefs Council allow us to proactively search for child sexual abuse imagery immune from prosecution during the course of our work. We gather data and intelligence, which populates a suite of data sets and services that we make available to tech companies. And these services collectively stop the upload, storage, and sharing and commercialization of online pictures and videos showing sexual abuse of children. So thank you for giving that content warning. I won't linger on this except to say I'm not going to be showing you anything illegal, obviously. There are a couple of sensitive images here that I will be showing you to show you the nature of what we're finding on the internet with regards to AI-generated CSAM, and I will abbreviate quite often child sexual abuse material into CSAM as I speak. Because everybody is online, then that's even easier just to take off the headphones, turn away from the screen if you feel like you've had your fill of what I'm saying. I will just start here. So last year, 2024, we received around 424,000 reports through to our analysts in Cambridge. Of those, just under 300,000 showed at least one, but often many, child sexual abuse images and videos. And then of those, 245 showed illegal AI imagery of child sexual abuse, which is a relatively small number compared to the bigger one, but we are seeing more and more and more each year, and the sophistication of the imagery is really growing, and I'll just show you an example of that in a minute. What I find interesting is that of that 245 reports that we received in actually led us to finding 7,644 individual images and videos. What we are seeing is we're seeing offenders are training AI models to produce new content of known victims. There's a particular victim called Olivia, and we featured her in 2018 because, if I can put it like this rather awfully, she's a very popular little girl among people who have a sexual interest in children. We are now finding LoRa's and checkpoints, so files that are built on her images that will generate her in new scenarios. We are also seeing how people are taking payments for creating new imagery. An example is Greater Manchester Police investigated, and then the guy was convicted, Hugh Nelson. Hugh Nelson took payments from, as he was describing it, dads and uncles who gave him photographs of real children, typically girls, in their lives, and wanted to see them in sexually abusive situations. So we should not also just think about the dangers of AI in terms of image creation. We need to pay attention to the dangers also of companion apps and chatbots which have emerged. And some of these chatbots and companions, and we're holding a roundtable very soon to start looking at this across the child protection sector. These have been confirmed as offering harmful advice to offenders. So schooling them in how to groom children, allowing them to practice on a chatbot and not a real child, but can hone their skills. We're also seeing the speed and development of AI increasing the availability of imagery. In general, we're seeing this come through in the amounts that we're seeing. And actually, I was looking at some data this morning, which showed me that despite the fact that we can proactively search for child sexual abuse imagery, most of the AI-generated imagery that we have found so far this year has been reported to us from members of the public who are stumbling across this and then being so concerned that they've made a report. Here is just a really quick look at the speed of development of this imagery. This is Midjourney, and you can see February 2022, what the result is of this image. I don't have the prompts to hand, but it's a girl smelling a flower, specifically a rose. And then we move all the way down to December 2023, and you can see the speed of improvement and how that image looks like it could be a studio image, professionally shot photograph. And just to give you a sense of the difficulties that our analysts have in assessing if images are of a living, breathing, heart-beating child or AI, here are some safe examples. So in your mind, very quickly, which one is real?
Emma,
And then
sorry,
yeah.
just to double check, just to ask, is everyone able to see slides?
Oh no, none of my slides been shared. I've literally been galloping through slides.
And they are great slides.
They what, sorry?
They are great slides, but yeah, I'm just
Oh, okay.
see them.
I'm just looking for any
Okay,
feedback.
now we can see. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I was sharing my screen. Maybe it hadn't been. Okay. Oh, that's such a shame. Okay, let me go back a little bit. Right. Well, there we go. That one is the real one. And then this is the example of the speed of development that you can see from February 2022 to December 2023, and how the final one there looks like a professionally shot photograph. So, in your mind, very quickly, which one is real? That one is. The others are made to look like amateur photography that have a certain patina to them. Now, this next image, I've just taken a pause here. This is the one where it's been taken from a set of images. Nothing about this is illegal that I'm going to show you, but I think it's probably the more upsetting of the imagery. So this was taken from about 30 AI CSAM videos. This is not showing any child sexual abuse imagery, but it does give you an idea of what our analysts are seeing. The premise of this video is that it's suggesting that the scene is from the making of a child sexual abuse pornographic movie, and this is a behind the scenes look. And there are a few minor visual defects that help confirm that this is AI content, but they are easy to miss, and they do require a higher definition screen than what you're able to see it on now. This is particularly disturbing, and there's lots of these that can be knitted together to create a sense of a film. So this is the short clip from another relatively recent find from earlier in the year, and it demonstrates the power of technology available in a regular smartphone or app. It doesn't require advanced computer skills to produce the results, and we have already had children reporting that their images are being used in this app and similar apps without their permission. And while the content created is not illegal in this example, it still can be distressing for those who are the subject of the app being used improperly. And you could imagine the app to create a short animated kiss with a student. And this short clip ultimately explains how it works. Jumping onto the next slide, you can show an example of real-time face swapping. For example, how you can use your webcam and software to impose another person's face on top of yours during a live conversation. And we first discovered this last year. And I'm going to provide a little bit of an idea about the advancements of the tech now by moving on to the next slide. In this latest development, which is now available as free software download, you can see that the user has taken just one image of Elon Musk and has used it as a transition face to lay over their own. Now, this could be seen as being quite a lot of fun, but there's huge potential for the software to be misused in multiple ways by offenders and criminals engaging in all types of online exploitation, scams, and fraud. So please keep in mind as well that the technology and the developments are moving very, very fast. And then with this one, AI, deepfakes, and extortion. So we regularly see in the hotline reports coming in directly from children and young people through a service that we established for the UK with NSPCC. Reports of children being sexually extorted for financial reasons. So this might typically be a teenage boy, and it affects boys mostly from the reports that we've seen, being encouraged, believing that they're perhaps entering some kind of relationship with somebody online, and they're encouraged to send a nude, and let's say the nude is between their head and just above their knees. The image has been sent, and then what is played back to them is a composite image of their nude, but perhaps a screen grab of their social media. If details about their school have been given, it might be a grab from an image of their school online. Those images are pushed together, and then there'll be a threat scrawled across the top of that image and a demand for payment, or else these images are going to be uploaded online. We have seen the real world impacts on this, and some boys are taking their lives when this happens to them, and it's part of generally organized crime. What we are seeing now is that AI and nudification apps which are widely shared on social media sites, are being used to take a completely innocuous image of a child, so fully clothed, could be school uniform, and then that image is run through the app and they are nudified, and then that child is shown that image. That they don't recognize that body necessarily, but how are they going to prove that they didn't send that image to someone in the first place, and then they are being extorted for money? So these quotes here are from children. Someone uploaded my deepfake morphed image on the internet and is harassing me for money. He's been using my fake naked videos and blackmailing me, and it goes on. So in addition to the sextortion type events that we see where the nude imagery has been shared and then it's played back to the child, we have so far this year had 151 reports directly from victims, child victims, who've had their images digitally manipulated with AI or other freely available software. And that's where I stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Emma. And just so everyone's aware, we are going to be having a bit of a discussion and a chance for the panel to be able to answer your questions later. So if you do have any questions that have already come up, yeah, you can feel free to already start submitting those, and we'll see which ones we can incorporate. And so now I'll pass over to Amy, who is going to be able to give a different dimension of what how this the threat of deepfakes can manifest, as well as what some of those potential solutions can be as well.
Um, Hello, hey, everybody. Really excited to share the work we are doing at Contrails, something that Emma and Ian before highlighted. Um, Deepfakes are turning into a major epidemic in multiple scenarios, one of the most extreme ones being child safety. Misinformation, be it financial, medical, political. And this is where Contrails comes in. And what we are trying to do is to solve it from the perspective of detection, reporting, and removal. A little bit about where we started. So, Contrails has been created by Diggy and myself. The inception was in early mid 2023, and this was right before the elections were due in India, and then pretty much 2024 saw elections across the globe. And one of the biggest problems that was cropping up was deep fakes, and we realized that very few folks have tools to detect it, and even lesser non-technical folks have tools to detect deep fakes. So that was kind of the inception of the idea. Today we are a pre-seed funded startup. So I come from the field, and Digvijay comes from AI, computer research, computer vision. And this is the merger that is required for all trust and safety solutions, we believe. But definitely for something like a deep fake. Moving forward, the numbers when it comes to deepfakes are unbelievable, and especially in the global south where the experimentation is done. So what we are seeing, because we are working in 180 countries with multiple folks, that the damages that later happen in Europe, United States, Hong Kong are actually experimented in places like Venezuela, Vietnam, India, Brazil, and then they come online. But the overall scenario is that globally we are seeing an impact of deepfakes. And a lot of the Fortune 500 companies are not coming forward and reporting, small scams of 200,000, $100,000, because it will lead to a larger loss of reputation. But deep fake threats and deep fake attacks are being witnessed across industries and the globe. And we get to know this from folks who we serve. So we work very closely with fact checkers across 180 countries. This helps us create a very diverse data stream of deep fakes from across the globe. And this is extremely important because it's a constantly changing play field where the threat vector is evolving. Something just to understand that in the last 18 months we have created six different versions, and currently our seventh version is under development of deepfake detection. So I think Ian highlighted it in a really positive manner, where he said that if you are not finding deepfakes, it might just be that the methodology has changed. And that is what we constantly see, that every week, honestly speaking, something new is under development, and our models need to train for it. And this is where the collaboration with our customers is really, really important, where we get to learn what are the different deepfakes being experimented in different geographies. And that helps improve our gold set of training, and also the checks that we build in the background. Now, how do we go about it? Now, this is just a very high level methodology that I have shared over here. That content authenticity is extremely important, and in multiple cases, it is very difficult to figure out, is the content being provided, is it authentic or is it something which is already a fake? Because of the numbers, there are multiple websites and content networks present on the internet, which can help create a completely fake company or a fake individual who doesn't exist in reality. So authenticity becomes extremely important. The other aspect is content intelligence, right? So what we need to do is constantly verify with the field that is this particular action actually taking place, if it's any sort of misinformation regarding the news or politics, or if it is financial and medical, then we need those stakeholders on board. So working together with multiple stakeholders makes our system extremely robust. And there is a lot of there's a major role of experts in the loop in trying to figure out whether the content being analyzed is real or fake. Now, there was a big wave of generic tools that also sprouted during 2024. Only aspect why they fail is A, they have to be constantly updated. B, the regulations are still not in place, and we have a panel coming up right after ours which will deep dive into it. And C, the legacy methodologies are not working on deepfakes because a lot of it was built upon human content moderation. A lot of it dependent upon databases that already existed. But this is a very different sort of problem we are trying to solve. And it requires a lot of out of box and a new wave of thinking in order to detect and solve for it. Now, constantly, the work that we are doing, the biggest hurdle is that content creation is becoming easier, cheaper, and is available to everybody. And while there are efforts like C2PA, which are more in the organized companies and working together with the well-known names, it's the open source and the disorganized and the deep web where most of the criminals are finding really sophisticated tools pretty much for free. So what is being done in the labs is something that our team has to be constantly looking over and building our models on top of it, fine tuning them and improving it. And that's the team we have got together. Besides me, everybody else pretty much comes from the tech space. So here's a quick overlook at the cycle we run. And I think this is actually the meat of it. If somebody is building a deep fake detection startup, well, I'm giving you the basics pretty much for free because we need a lot of people across the globe. The first part is data, right? Real world data, and getting it legally. Currently, the biggest problem in AI is that IP and content verification is not even being looked at. So get clean, well labeled data. That's the first part. And for this, you would require a lot of grassroots networks to find healthy labeled data. The second part is modeling, which is pretty much the magic of any AI tool, where you have to put the right architectures in space. Having a good understanding of content moderation really helps. And then the last part, which is efficiency. So while deepfake detection can, in theory, be done at scale, the cost is extremely high, and no organization across the globe has that kind of resources. So making efficient models for specific deepfake detection in specific geography is the route forward. And that is how we have been able to succeed and get our efficiency higher. And that would be something that I would like to recommend to folks. And here is pretty much like a quick snapshot on how this content moderation works. There is bulk content moderation, that those are the existing tools that are present on platforms with governments, with various service providers. Where we come in is if the human content moderator is unable to spot or has a doubt whether the given file is real or a fake, then content moderation like Contrails jumps in and creates reports. Also, we can create, and that's pretty much the future we are working upon, are things which are like deepfake agents. Because reporting is really complex, especially if it is NCII, CSAM, as one requires law enforcement, maybe multiple authorities across the globe. So the next aspect post detection is removal and reporting, and removal of copies, not just on the platform, but across the globe, and reporting across various authorities. So yeah, I think with that, I come to the end of my presentation. I'll drop in my LinkedIn in the chat, and happy to yeah, connect with folks. Over to you, Chanel and George.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Amy. And yeah, it's fun for people that on the call that may not know. So when we talk about content moderation, this is the area of work that happens kind of behind the scenes of like social media platforms, e-commerce platforms, or any platform where you're going to be seeing users being able to upload like images or text, and other users being able to see it. And so it is this like this hidden in between world where it's deciding like what is allowed to be seen and not allowed to be seen, and with a view of trying to keep that as those experiences as safe as possible for people. So it is a hugely complex and stressful and challenging area of work. And so yeah, just to give an extra sense of like how significant it is that Ami has been able to do a lot of do this type of make this type of intervention with these types of innovations with something that's able to consider global needs, not just the needs of one particular country or region. So yeah, I just wanted people to understand how incredible that piece of work is. And so, yep, now I will pass over to George, who is one of the co-founders of Illuminate Tech. And George, who has experience of thinking about this from the regulatory space in terms of like what it means for there to be effective, laws and regulatory systems to be able to help manage these types of problems, but then also thinking about this from the perspective of being able to design and provide some of those solutions as well. So yeah, I'll just hand you over to George.
Great, thanks so much, Chanel, and thanks Emma and Ami. So just to build out that introduction a tiny bit, my name's George from Illuminate Tech, as Chanel said. At a very high level, we help tech companies understand how they might pose risks to their users and how to think about mitigating those risks. And we've been supporting Project DefAI as well. I'm not Jess from Ofcom, who was meant to be speaking on this panel. As Chanel said, she's unwell. But I am going to try and touch on a few of the topics that I think Jess was planning on speaking to. Before I do that, I just want to pick up on a few of the things that Ami was saying and really echo them. I think our third session, where we're talking about Project DefAI itself and building deepfake detection systems in the context of biometric age estimation, what Ami said will resonate with a lot of what that panel we will be discussing, particularly in terms of efficiency. So if you want to detect deepfakes at scale, it might be possible, but you might need huge amounts of, for example, computational power. If you're thinking about access to sensitive areas of government or financial institutions, you might have the capacity to have those kind of levels of robust deepfake detection systems. The challenge we're all facing here is how do you, for example, compress those models so they can be operationalized in different contexts in day-to-day scenarios, so you can really deal with the scale of harms we're looking at here. So to come on briefly to what Jess was planning on touching on, I think Ofcom have recently published a report on deepfake defenses, which looks at some of the technologies that are currently being used to help detect and defend against deepfakes in different contexts. And a lot of these tools are, I think it's fair to say, slightly more light touch than the kind of things AMI has been working on or Project DefAI has been working on, which isn't to say they're less effective at all. It just means they operate slightly differently. So 3 tools that are discussed in this report are watermarking tools, which is where you effectively embed a signal into some content, whether that's an image of a person or anything, and that signal authenticates content and individuals within that content as well. So watermarks are often completely invisible. So one of the benefits of them is they don't have much of an impact on the user experience. And the steps to watermarking are you embed the watermark into the content initially, then you have to have a separate mechanism to detect that watermark. And then finally, you need to interpret and take action as a result of detecting that watermark. So what's really important here is how you respond to the detection of watermarks is a policy decision. As always, this is not about kind of complete techno-solutionism. And I think that's why we've tried to bring together a diverse group of people today to show that you need a civil society approach, you need careful, considered policy, as well as these technology tools. So the second deepfake detection solution, which is discussed in this report, is provenance metadata. So there's a lot of metadata floating about on the internet. This is data kind of associated with anything really, with pieces of content, for example. That could be data to do with the time history of that content, the authors of that content. And you can embed into the metadata information about the provenance of that material. Some of the benefits of using provenance metadata are that you can embed really quite detailed information into that metadata. And some of the common standards that AMI referenced, actually, C2PA, already exist, which means that things like interoperability and deploying this at scale is a bit easier. There are some downsides that it's quite hard to understand what metadata is from a user perspective. And so in terms of transparency and accessibility, that could pose threats. In addition to that, I think it is still possible to remove metadata, so it's not a 100% robust solution. So we've got watermarking, we've got provenance metadata, and then the third technique discussed in Ofcom's report is AI labels. So AI labels are much more transparent, and you may have seen these if you've been sharing things on Instagram or LinkedIn or uploading content. Sometimes you get a nudge now saying, is this AI that you're uploading? Is this content you're sharing AI? Do you want to tag it as AI? This depends quite a lot on users honestly engaging with this tooling. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because most people online, I'd hope, are not necessarily bad actors. And the internet is, as we've all been discussing, increasingly being characterized by the proliferation of material generated by generative AI. And so what we need to do is help people to critically engage with that new online landscape. And AI labels mean we're asking people to think carefully about, okay, if I've generated this funny AI image of the Pope in a hoodie or whatever it might be, there's no harm in saying it's AI. It's just a laugh, but it might be useful to be transparent about that, just in case someone somewhere is severely offended by the idea that the Pope would wear a hoodie. There are some challenges here from a policy perspective as well, though. So, for example, what if an image is partially synthetic? Where do you kind of cross the threshold between having to label an image as 100% AI generated versus I've just tweaked something about this image with AI? Obviously, we've had photoshopping, we've had Instagram filters for many, many years. And where's kind of the threshold between those two things? So AI labels are definitely kind of a transparent tool that I think we'll be seeing a lot more of, but I don't think they're necessarily suitable to be used on their own. With all of these tools, the decision about how you implement them is always the key thing, right? So what platforms increasingly have to do around the world, and this is what we do at Illuminate Tech, is take a holistic view of your platform, understand how the functionalities of that platform might give rise to harm, and then you need to assess the risk of different kinds of harm taking place on your platform. So how are the functionalities of your platform leading to the risk of intimate image abuse? Do you have an embedded AI tool in your platform? Can users anonymously share content with each other? Then you need to go, okay, I've understood the risk of harm here. What steps do I need to take to reduce that risk, to mitigate that risk until it's at an acceptable level where we can continue to monitor it? So tools like AI labels, like watermarking, things like Contrails AI may all be things that you want to consider adopting on your platform in order to mitigate those risks and make sure that you're doing your best to ensure the systems and processes on your platform are adequate to at least respond to these harms. As I think Ian mentioned at the outset, though, the important thing to acknowledge is this is not a static issue. The threat vectors are going to continue to evolve, and as such, risk assessments need to be performed on a continual and regular basis so you can understand, okay, we've got a robust platform right now. In 6 months' time, are the tools we're using to defend against these harms still going to be effective? So that's my little improvised spiel on deepfake detection within the context of platform risk assessments. I will hand back to Chanel. I think we're going to have a bit of open discussion, Q&A.
Yep, thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, just a reminder to everyone that's watching as well, that you can, if you have any questions that are coming out from this discussion so far, feel free to submit them too. The first thing that's on my mind with this is actually thinking about how, we talk about this in terms of like the idea of it being kind of, one particular risk area. So we're talking about this in terms of deep fakes, or we're talking about this in terms of, maybe like, labeling of child sexual exploitation and abuse material or things like this. But there are so many complexities of harms that can occur from, any of the examples that you've talked about. And I find that, and that's something that I find quite challenging, because I think, especially thinking about what it meant in terms of, the range of resources and expertise we would need to be able to manage these types of problems at larger tech companies and big tech, which means that, it might still be more than we're given, but we do have access to a lot. But actually what this might mean for, let's say, for example, like the smaller platforms that could either be, or the smaller services that could either be kind of working with media uploads, like let's say like in an education setting in schools, or helping to, or providing technology that might be designed for non-malicious use, but that can be like adding to the challenge, like what it means for them to even be able to understand what the risk areas are across that complexity, as well as what that adequate response could be. Because even, thinking with one of the videos in particular that you were showing, Emma, reminded me of how in a lot of the kind of misinformation issues and like large scale kind of problems that I've worked on in the past, to get the nuance of how harmful it is, especially where it can come down to, for example, racial or ethnic tensions, or any of those kind of other tensions within a particular region, could be quite challenging. For it to not just be seen as, well, it's not real content, but actually it might be seen as funny by some people, versus actually this is something that's adding widespread harm. So yeah, sorry, just thinking about that wide range of complexities, I'd just be interested in hearing some of your views on, how you're thinking about what this means for really being able to understand the scale of the problem, but also what it means for being able to, for, organizations, regulators to be able to respond to that too. And yeah, Amy, I can see you're ready to jump in.
Yeah, it just sparked a thought, because George also mentioned this aspect of, the Pope wearing a hoodie and stuff like that. I think more than the platforms, I'm looking at the people. That's where I come from. And in areas where awareness is less, right? Even some very funny or something which is commonly understood by us as deepfakes go across as reality and the absolute truth. That is a systemic problem which hasn't been seen before. Suddenly, overnight, if people start believing that a certain politician is dead or a certain religion has been adopted by a certain country, in areas across the globe, especially in places like India where we are very sensitive towards religion or politics, the chaos caused on the ground is insane. It is bigger than any terrorist attack we have known. That sort of a problem happens. When we keep that perspective in the scenario, then be it a large platform or a small platform, the threat of malicious deepfake media reaching out and causing havoc is equally the same. Because multiple times, what is viral on the known top 5 platform has actually started on some new startup that is just trying to gain a little bit of visibility. So, here, the work that George is doing, something that we guys are doing, something that Roost is doing, which is this open source solutioning, we need some basic tools to ensure that this malicious media does not get even that little bit of optimum numbers to become viral on the internet. So a lot of the deepfakes that have actually been deciphered by fact checkers and are known to a few people still remain to run as reality for most of the human population on the internet. And this is where collaboration becomes really important. So the scale on the internet might be very small, but the impact on the ground is really large. And that is something that we need to keep in mind, which is called basically safety by design. And this is more focused on the smaller platforms, which are at a larger threat than actually the bigger ones, because the bigger ones have the money and the resources to do a lot more.
Yeah, jump in, Emma.
Oh, thanks. It's really interesting because I realise as you, Amy and George are both talking, that the areas of the internet that we work in are not typically with good actors who are wanting to ensure that this imagery is well tagged and labelled and goes up because the imagery in itself is illegal. The one thing I will say, which I'm really pleased about, is that the UK, in the UK law says AI-generated child sexual abuse imagery is illegal. It's already illegal here. So we don't have to jump over that hurdle, where in other countries it is not necessarily illegal. And we're currently working in Europe that has a carve-out that says it might be okay for personal use, which I find absolutely alarming. So there's some catching up to do in other jurisdictions. We are actually, I won't go into any regulation. I know that's coming up on the panel next. What I will speak to is that you made a point about professionals in schools. Schools are really worried about how I guess there's so many positives with AI, but what they need to be alert to, it just sounds complicated and hard. And we're all just still discovering layers of complexity. And us at the IWF, we're often the first to see new ways that AI is being abused for child sexual abuse material. So when it comes to like nudification apps, where you're suddenly getting peer on peer in schools using the apps to denudify or to nudify their friends, peers, sharing content for bullying reasons, shaming. How do schools deal with that? How do schools deal with if they're a teacher and they've been nudified and the imagery is being sent around? So we've worked closely with the National Crime Agency, and a couple of weeks ago we launched a resource for schools to try and help them understand what the safety and harm implications are. With regards to complexity, what worries us at the IWF is the ease at which huge volumes of imagery can be created that is illegal. And even if you say, right, we know it's there, but it's just overwhelming to deal with, actually, when it is very clearly based on the likenesses of real children, or you've also got the likenesses of well-known people, celebrities, politicians in the position of the offender, there's that. If we work very closely with the National Crime Agency to do victim identification packages, so we see a lot of the same victims all the time. If a new victim comes along, we do some extra scrutiny of the images to pull out anything that might help the police understand where that child is and how they go and rescue them. With AI content, we need to firstly realize it's AI and that we don't send the police off looking for a child that in reality doesn't actually exist. And then when it comes to the platforms themselves, and actually we're talking about tagging the material, one thing that was bizarre to us to begin with, but I can understand it now. We created a couple of different research reports when we first started seeing AI CSAM. We found offenders self-tagging the imagery they were creating as CSAM because they were so proud of their work. There are communities of people who operate on forums on the dark web that are sharing hints and tips as to how to get to really hone their trade craft, but then tagging to say, I used this software, that software, I refined it by this. Doesn't it look good? Let me know if you want to know more. So they are self-proclaiming that this is AI, which is actually partly helping us as well. So I will leave that there.
Thanks very much for that, Emma. And I know that we do have 2 questions in the that's been submitted. The first thing, thinking about what it means for what can people be doing in relation to when there's situations where they're noticing problematic things and platforms are not, there might be no way to report it on the platform, or platforms may not even necessarily be responding well. And another question that's thinking about how regulators should be responding, and are they generally, and how sympathetic they should be when, let's say a platform or a service is trying, but they're still actually facing a new or kind of very sophisticated deepfake attack. These are 2 great questions, but we have run out of time for this panel. But I can say that, it's definitely worth paying attention to the next panels that will be coming up, because they will help to kind of bring different perspectives and different lights and different views on, potential ways to think about and navigate those areas in those discussions. So but thank you very much for Emma, Amy, and George. These are, there's so much expertise that you all have, which was very challenging to think of how to fit it into this time, I know. But I hope it's been an interesting and useful discussion for everyone.
Thanks so much. See you all after the break.